I am Vanessa, a woman in my mid-30s. I work as an office clerk and lead a very regular life every day. My family consisted of 4 people: my mother, my sister Michelle, and our father, who recently passed away. From a young age, I felt a particularly deep bond with my father among my family members. He was a quiet and gentle man but became resolute when needed to protect us, always a reliable presence. His warm gaze and his quiet yet powerful words were always a source of support for me. I have countless memories with my father. Every Sunday, we would take care of the flower beds together in the garden. I vividly remember how he would lift me gently when I fell and cried at my elementary school sports day, and how he enjoyed taking photos more than anyone else during family trips. I particularly remember the day I first learned to ride a bicycle. Despite nearly falling several times, he never let go, supporting me throughout. That image of my father is an irreplaceable treasure for me. Even when I was troubled at work, he would say, "Vanessa, believe in what you want to do," encouraging me repeatedly. His words were always precise, pushing me forward strongly. Losing him was the greatest sorrow of my life. The grief that welled up from the depths of my heart was so profound that it felt like it was crushing me. My father passed away a few weeks ago. He had been in and out of the hospital for about a year due to illness, but the last few months were spent in continuous care at the hospital. The meals brought to his hospital room couldn't have tasted good to him. Yet, I vividly remember how he happily munched on the fruits we brought him. I visited his hospital room almost daily after work. Whenever I visited, he would greet me with a smile. Despite his frailty, the sight of his smile whenever he saw me was a great encouragement. He was always more concerned about my work and personal life than his own, but he had confided to my mother that he felt his physical strength declining and that it was hard. My mother, without telling me this, always supported him resolutely. She tried to alleviate some of his pain by massaging him and playing his favorite music. We had been told by the doctor that his time might be limited, so we thought we were prepared. However, when the time actually came, I couldn't accept the reality. When I witnessed his last moments in the hospital room, the serenity of him closing his eyes peacefully left a huge void in my heart. The warmth of my father, his gentle voice, and his smile seemed to have disappeared from my world forever. After the funeral, memories of my father remained vividly within me. Every time I returned home, I seemed to see his smiling face. Opening the front door, I would hear his gentle voice saying, "Welcome back," making me turn around again and again. Even during dinners with my family, I would suddenly think, if only father were here, and my heart would tighten. My mother was also grieving, but she tried to stay strong to support me and Michelle. I was always impressed by her strength. As for my sister Michelle, she seemed to handle the funeral and other procedures in a business-like manner, almost as if it were someone else's concern, which unsettled me. Michelle had always been a wild character, causing endless trouble for our parents. During her school days, she had been called to the school many times, troubling our parents. Nevertheless, they never gave up on Michelle and continued to shower her with love. Since marrying a man who works at a major bank a few years ago, she hardly visited our family home. At the wedding, I remember how my father looked at Michelle with genuine happiness. Even after our father's health declined, she stayed in contact but never visited. She couldn't have known how much our father missed her. However, she showed up on the day of the funeral, seeming more excited about the inheritance than saddened by our father's death. While we were overwhelmed with grief, Michelle was all about the inheritance, leaving me at a loss for words. Amidst all this, the discussion about dividing my father's estate began. One day, with a lawyer present, the whole family gathered to open my father's will. The atmosphere was somber, but I also felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety about what our father had left us. I wondered how his deep love would connect us. The lawyer began reading the will. First, it was revealed that the house and land were left to my mother, which was a natural outcome, and she quietly accepted it with a nod. Then it was announced that Michelle would inherit $130,000 in cash. Hearing this, Michelle chuckled and said, "As expected, Dad did the right thing." Her words carried no hint of sadness, only a focus on the money. Then it was my turn. I couldn't believe what the lawyer said next. "Vanessa will receive a cassette player." The last thing handed to me was just an old cassette player. I couldn't help but utter in shock. I couldn't understand what had happened and just stared at the lawyer. When I asked if there had been some mistake, the lawyer calmly replied, "This was your father's clear intention." Even after hearing this explanation, my doubts were not cleared, and I was simply bewildered. I couldn't comprehend my father's true intentions and was only confused. Michelle looked at the cassette player and sneered, "Can you even call that an inheritance?" Her insensitive words pierced deep into my heart. I couldn't understand why my father had left me such a thing, feeling completely disregarded. It felt as if I were worthless to him. Trying to calm me, my mother said gently, "Vanessa, your father must have had his reasons." However, those words only deepened the wound in my heart. If he had his reasons, why didn't he explain them to me? Receiving just an old cassette player, was I really cherished as his daughter? Such doubts began to arise, deeply hurting me. Was my bond with my father truly solid? These doubts wounded my heart deeply. I returned home and placed the cassette player on the table, staring at it intently. No matter how hard I looked, I couldn't feel that it was anything special. Sitting before what seemed like mere junk, anger and frustration swirled within me. Why only me? This thought dominated me. "Dad, why did you leave this to me?" Every time I voiced these words, my heart ached. I had thought that my father and I were especially closely bonded within our family. I remember how he spent a lot of time with me from my childhood. He would sit with me at the desk and solve problems together when I struggled with my studies, and we enjoyed walks just the two of us in the park on weekends. Following my father and talking about various things during those times was irreplaceable for me. Why had he left me such an unfair inheritance? Unable to accept it, I struggled to hold back the tears. Crying wouldn't bring my father back. I had to remind myself of that. However, I reconsidered, thinking, this is something my father left for me, and decided to check if it still worked. I pressed the power button and tried the play button, but the cassette player did not respond at all. Even when I inserted a cassette, there was no sound, not even the hum of the motor. It might be broken, I thought disappointedly, but I felt reluctant to just discard something my father had left me. I couldn't help but think that perhaps my father's love was hidden within this broken cassette player, and I couldn't bring myself to give up on it. The next day, I took it to a repair shop. When I explained to the clerk that it was not working and asked for repairs, they said, "It's quite old. It might take some time, but we'll take a look." As I left the cassette player at the shop and walked home, I was filled with mixed emotions. If this is meant to reveal my father's true intentions, could something be hidden within it? I wondered, but time passed without any answers. As I waited for the cassette player to be repaired, I found myself repeatedly thinking of my father and was overwhelmed by deep sadness. While waiting for the repair to be completed, I decided to continue sorting through my father's belongings. His room was filled with his favorite desk, bookshelf, and numerous photos of us as a family. Each time I touched these items, memories of my father vividly came back to life. In every photo, he had a gentle smile. Each time I remembered that smile, my heart warmed. One day, I found a cassette tape in an old box. It was labeled, "To Vanessa," in my father's handwriting. My hands trembled with surprise and emotion, and I hurriedly called the repair shop. "If the cassette player is fixed, I'd like to pick it up immediately," I said. The clerk replied, "The repair has just been completed," and I immediately went to the shop. A tape recorded with a message from my father. With anticipation and anxiety, my heart thumped loudly. When I got home, I immediately inserted the cassette and pressed play. After a moment of silence, my father's calm voice filled the room. Tears welled up in my eyes the instant I heard his voice, which sounded as if he were alive, gently echoing in my ears. Vanessa, if you are listening to this, I am no longer in this world." His voice was nostalgic, as if he were speaking right in front of me. As I listened, my father's words deeply penetrated my heart. "Vanessa, thank you for everything. You've helped me in so many ways. Thanks to you supporting your mother and Michelle, I was able to spend my days in peace. But there's something I want only you to know. I've entrusted something very important to you. Please find it. It's in the storage shed." The moment I heard those words, my heart raced. What could this important thing that my father mentioned be? Although the cassette didn't specify the exact location, I was determined to find it, feeling that by doing so, I could reconnect with my father. From the next day, I began searching every corner of our house. My father's room, the storage shed, even the basement. These were all places he cherished, but I found nothing that seemed right. However, I didn't give up, and after several days of searching, I finally found a small safe in the back of the storage room. The excitement of finding the safe was indescribable. The safe matched the key to my father's desk, and I was able to open it immediately. Inside were several beautifully crafted antique watches, clearly the result of years of collection. The moment I opened the safe, I was breathless. The beautiful watches shimmered like jewels. Dad. I remembered seeing him wear these watches occasionally and couldn't stop my tears. Every time I looked at the watches, I was reminded of my father's gentle smile, which made my heart ache. I had the watch collection appraised by an expert, and it turned out to be worth over $500,000. At that moment, I felt as if I finally understood what my father had been trying to tell me. The true value of things is not measured by their appearance or price. Think about the meaning behind things. My father's teaching resonated deeply with me. I realized that my father had left me something truly valuable, not in terms of money, but in what really matters. This discovery was a poignant moment for me, but at the same time, I had no inkling of the turmoil that this collection would later cause. At that time, I had no idea that this event was just the beginning of a major upheaval that would involve my family. When I told my mother about it, she nodded quietly and smiled. "That's just like your father. I think he wanted to tell you something more than just money." Her words brought me some solace, but the calm did not last long. Her smile seemed to envelop me gently. A few days later, my sister Michelle visited our family home. My mother and I were living together at our family home, but she had moved out several years ago. As I was drinking coffee in the living room, Michelle entered somewhat forcefully through the front door and immediately said to me, "I heard that the watch collection is worth over $500,000. Is that true?" I was momentarily taken aback by her question, but thinking that lying was pointless, I replied, "Yes, that's what Dad entrusted to me." At that moment, Michelle's expression visibly changed and she frowned, her tone becoming more forceful. "Isn't that weird? We're sisters, so why is it so unfair? Dad's inheritance should be divided equally among us." I chose my words carefully and responded, "But this was something Dad entrusted to me through his will and a cassette tape. Michelle, you have $130,000 in cash. Isn't that enough?" However, Michelle showed no signs of being convinced. "That doesn't matter. I should have a right to that collection too." Her attitude, becoming more aggressive, left me at a loss for words. "Well, fine. I have work, so I'm going back, but I'll come again." With that, Michelle left our house. Her words deeply hurt me, filling me with anxiety. After that, Michelle frequently criticized me. Dad always treated Vanessa specially, or Vanessa always gets more. She would say, as if I were monopolizing everything. Michelle's words pierced my heart like thorns, causing me great distress. I didn't want to let her into the house, but since she also had a key to our family home, there was nothing I could do. I tried to respond to my sister as calmly as possible, but I gradually felt my spirit wearing down. Michelle's attacks cornered me mentally and left me exhausted both emotionally and physically. Michelle had always favored glamorous things, wearing luxury brands and enjoying meals at fancy restaurants had become her routine. With a sociable personality, she was always surrounded by people and loved attending glamorous parties. She had married a successful banker a few years ago and, on the surface, seemed to lead a wealthy and stable life. The initial years of her marriage were peaceful and happy. Her husband had a solid character, sincere in his work, and valued family. However, Michelle's spending habits remained unchanged, and after their marriage, she continued to buy luxury brands and frequently enjoyed overseas trips. At first, her husband tolerated her lavish lifestyle, but he gradually began to question it. "Michelle, shouldn't you consider saving a bit?" Every time her husband mentioned it, Michelle would laugh it off, saying, "I want to enjoy my life." However, his dissatisfaction built up over time, and gradually a cold atmosphere began to dominate their relationship. Michelle continued to prioritize her desires, ignoring her husband's concerns. During this period, Michelle started gambling. What began as mere fun quickly turned into a serious habit, as she began to gamble large amounts of money. As her losses accumulated, she kept telling herself, "Next time I'll win," and gambled even more. As a result, her debts ballooned to an amount she could no longer hide from her husband. No one was able to stop Michelle as she spiraled deeper into her gambling addiction. When her husband discovered the debts, their relationship completely broke down. Furious, he declared, "I can't overlook this any longer," and began to prepare for divorce. However, already burdened with a substantial amount of debt, Michelle found it difficult to manage without her husband's financial support. Desperate, she began to consider tapping into the family's assets. Abandoned by her husband, Michelle was financially cornered and placed in a desperate situation. One day when I returned home from work, I sensed something was off. An eerie silence enveloped the house, different from the usual. Just as I had suggested to my mother that we change the locks, although the front door was securely locked, something felt oddly misplaced. Glancing around the living room, I noticed a slight disarray at one corner of the shelf where my father's watch collection was displayed. The unnaturally empty space made me feel uneasy. A sense of foreboding washed over me, and I hurried to check the collection. Then, in the next moment, I was at a loss for words. Several watches had disappeared without a trace. I was struck by a chilling sensation. Could it be? For a moment, my mind was in turmoil, flooded with disbelief. Was it theft or just a misunderstanding? I searched every corner of the room, but the missing watches were nowhere to be found. With a sinking feeling, I opened a well-known online auction site. I entered the details of the watches and hit the search button. Among the search results displayed on the screen, I recognized one of the watches. The name of the seller was Michelle. This can't be. My hands trembled, and a lump formed in my throat. I couldn't believe that my own sister would try to sell our father's mementos in such a manner. I immediately called Michelle. "Michelle, what is this about? Did you take Dad's watches?" Michelle's voice was surprisingly calm. "You noticed quite quickly. It's family inheritance, so don't I have a right to it?" Struggling to contain my anger, I managed to say, "Those were precious items Dad entrusted to me. How could you take them without permission?" But Michelle was unapologetic. "Don't make such a big deal out of it. They're just antiques, right? If they're valuable, it's better to turn them into money," she retorted. Her words deeply wounded me, and I trembled with anger. At that moment, I realized that further discussion was futile. Hearing her refer to the watches, filled with our father's memories, as just antiques, made it clear that nothing I said would make a difference. I took a deep breath and made a quiet resolution. This could not go unresolved. I immediately reported the situation to the police. My father's legacy could not be trampled upon. I was resolute. The police quickly started an investigation and confirmed that Michelle had entered my home without permission and taken the watches. But that was not all. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that she had accumulated a huge gambling debt and was attempting to dispose of the family's assets illegally to pay it off. Michelle's crimes were far greater than she had imagined. The investigators carefully gathered evidence, and once the situation was clear, an arrest warrant was issued. A few days later, Michelle was arrested by the police. Michelle's arrest was a shocking event for me. I had never imagined my sister could become a criminal. When I heard that Michelle had been arrested, I felt a complex mix of emotions. While I was relieved that she would face justice, I also felt an indescribable sense of loss that our family bonds were completely shattered. Michelle's arrest left a deep scar on my heart. At the moment of her arrest, Michelle became frantic and tried desperately to resist. "Wait. This is a mistake. It's just a family issue." But the police calmly handcuffed her and stated firmly, "Your actions constitute theft." We'll discuss this further at the police station. Michelle continued to struggle, but as she noticed the stares from those around her, her face gradually paled. For the first time, fear and regret appeared in her eyes. Michelle's face was etched with despair. When I heard that Michelle had been taken to the police station, I let out a deep breath. While I had to accept this as fact, mixed feelings about whether this was the best outcome crossed my mind. Now that her crimes were revealed, it was only right that she be judged under the law, but I still could not completely sever the feelings I had for her as my sister. My heart was swirling with complex emotions. As the police interrogation progressed, the details of Michelle's crimes were gradually revealed. Not only had she entered my home without permission and taken the watches, but she had also illegally sold off family assets in the past and used the funds for gambling. There was also a suggestion that she had been involved in illegal transactions to repay her debts. Michelle's crimes far exceeded what anyone could have imagined. During the interrogation, Michelle repeatedly claimed, "I was just trying to share the family inheritance." However, her excuses did not hold up against the clear evidence. The police determined her actions to be a clear case of theft, and it was decided that she would be formally charged. Michelle's fate was to be judged by the law. On the day of the trial, Michelle stood in the courtroom, her demeanor uneasy, occasionally looking down. Her lawyer argued, "This is a family matter and too severe to be considered a criminal case." But the judge spoke sternly. "Your actions are not just a family issue. You betrayed trust and deliberately attempted to steal assets, which is a crime that cannot be overlooked socially." At those words, Michelle seemed to truly understand the gravity of the situation for the first time. She shivered, bit her lip, and struggled to hold back tears. Michelle's face was filled with regret and despair. Ultimately, Michelle received a suspended sentence. She avoided prison, but her record as a criminal remained, and her social credibility was completely lost. Michelle was shunned by society. After the trial, I met my mother outside the courthouse. She sighed quietly and murmured, "I never expected it to come to this." Her voice was tinged with the helpless feeling of a parent who has lost a child. My mother's heart was filled with deep sorrow. After receiving her guilty verdict, Michelle's life rapidly fell apart. The first thing that hit her was the collapse of her family. Michelle's downfall was something no one had anticipated. Following the public revelation of the trial's outcome, Michelle's husband decided he could no longer endure their life together and resolved to divorce her. Their relationship had already been cold, but with Michelle's crimes brought to light, her husband proceeded with the divorce without any sentiment. During the division of assets, he took a firm stance with his lawyers and left Michelle with almost nothing. Michelle was completely abandoned by her husband. As a result, she was forced to leave the luxurious home that was in her husband's name and moved into an old apartment in the suburbs. Michelle's life was completely transformed. Her new home was starkly different from her previous lavish lifestyle. The furniture was minimal, and due to financial constraints, she often couldn't afford heating. The days surrounded by luxurious dinners and high-end brands were behind her, and now she was reduced to hunting for specials at the supermarket. Michelle's living conditions had become drastically poorer compared to her past life. Michelle's financial situation continued to deteriorate. Burdened with overwhelming debt even after the trial, she found herself in a situation where she had to work incessantly, day and night. Juggling multiple part-time jobs and enduring long hours of labor, she was constantly chased by the need to pay off the interest on her debts. Michelle spent her days utterly exhausted. Amid this harsh lifestyle, Michelle's health began to decline as well. The glamour she once had completely vanished, replaced by a gaunt face deeply etched with fatigue. As she fell into despair, the friends who once surrounded her distanced themselves, leaving her utterly alone. Michelle had become completely isolated. There was one instance when she reached out through our mother for help, asking for just a little money. Her voice was no longer assertive but weak and fragile. My mother and I struggled for days with how to respond. Michelle is clearly desperate, but given her past actions, we can't be sure she would use the money wisely. My mother pondered this repeatedly, and I shared her concerns. Ultimately, we decided to respond by saying, "We won't provide money, but if you have specific problems, we can talk about them." However, after that, we received no further communication from Michelle. She couldn't accept our conditions. We hardly knew anything about Michelle's subsequent life. Occasionally, we would hear rumors about her continuing to work night shifts to pay off her debts and her increasingly difficult life. Gradually, Michelle faded from our memories. My mother and I rarely mentioned her name, while my mother reminded herself, "This is the path Michelle chose for herself." She occasionally showed a wistful expression. Her heart was filled with deep love for her daughter. One day, while dining with my mother, I mentioned, "I hope Michelle is doing well somewhere." After a moment of thought, my mother nodded slightly. "Yes, I hope so too." We never knew the details of what happened to Michelle afterward. Silently, I hoped that one day she would be able to turn her life around and atone for her past mistakes. I truly wished, from the bottom of my heart, that Michelle would find happiness one day.